Hey everybody, I'm Jennifer Maggio. Thank you so much for joining the Life of a Single Mom's YouTube channel. We are so excited to have you. And today we are going to be talking about setting a godly example for your kids, which we have lots to say on the matter. And I have two special guests with me. I have Michelle Donnelly, who is a single mom of 3 and also the CEO of Plus One Parents. And then I have Dana Spencer. And Dana is a single mother of an adult child, first of all. So she's been there, done that. Hello. And you're also a financial counselor and an author. So thank you guys both for being part of the show. So guys, let's just jump right into it and talk about this whole idea of godly parenting and specifically some of the challenges that you face. So Michelle, we'll start with you. Talk about, first of all, share with the audience the age range of your kiddos and then share about some of the biggest challenges you found in raising them as a single mom.
Sure. My kids are 14, 11, and 5. And so that's a great span of ages, but also I became a single mom 5 years ago. And so I'd say one of the biggest challenges is as they grow and as they mature and understand their story, as it's still continuing to unfold, that changes with their development and their ability to even really understand this life that they're walking in with me. And sometimes that makes for some difficult emotions, even for some thoughts and feelings they may have about me and the journey that I'm on and, making space for that.
Yeah. It's difficult raising kiddos in a 2-parent home. And then when you add in the element of being a single mom and the emotions that are associated with that for many children, then it just gets more complicated. And so what has your experience been, Dana, as far as what were the biggest challenges you faced in raising your son alone?
I definitely think the biggest challenge would have been being consistent with discipline. Like you're having to work all day, and when you get home, you get to hear about what happened at school and having to address getting dinner on the table. So you have all of these things that you have to do. So discipline and being consistent with discipline, like you just wanted to be like, I'm done, but you can't because right. You are the only one. So if you don't teach your child to obey or whatever you're working on, then they're not gonna learn it. So definitely being consistent was, I would say, my biggest struggle.
Yeah, I think, there's sometimes when you've worked, I can remember working 80 hours a week. I was working a full-time job and then a side hustle, and then I was going to college at night at one point, and I near lost my mind during a season of time. But I can remember plopping the kids in front of the TV just out of exhaustion. And for way too long, and wasn't even monitoring the content at one point, sad to say, because I'm just so tired. I need somebody to babysit these kiddos so that I don't have to, even to just take a few minutes to myself to just breathe. And so I think that's one of the pieces of this, as we're talking to moms out there who are parenting alone, it's like you're just tired. So all of these parenting techniques in theory are great until you have to walk it out. And then you're just in survival mode. And so let's talk about what are some of the things that were non-negotiables in your home as it came to setting a godly example for your kids. Dana?
I definitely would say church was not an option. So that wasn't a decision we had to make. Like we were going to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And so that was never, are we going to church today? Are we going to do that? No, we're going to church. So just making sure that that was clear and that was not something that we were going to waver on because I needed that extension, that village that the church was providing for me at that time. So that was definitely a non-negotiable.
I love that. I think you set the expectation early on that this is what we're doing. And that's exactly right. The kids will ask, are we going to church? Are we doing this? If the expectation is not there. But if it's just, hey, that's where we're going to be on Sunday. And there's power there. We know that the Word teaches that we're supposed to be planted in God's house. So we can talk about that. But just as a mom, when you are truly alone and you don't have godly role model in many instances and you're, drowning financially, I can remember loading my kids up to church because they were serving a Sunday night meal. Like I can remember, it's potluck Wednesday, we've got to go. And so there was this practical component of church that was survival mode for me. Or, they're doing this, and I was lonely, so I'm out at business meetings on a Tuesday night, at our church. Truly because I was so lonely and everything that I needed, the church had. And so what about you, Michelle? What are some things that were non-negotiables for you or still maybe are as you're parenting?
Yeah, well, I agree with Dana, first and foremost, that having that house of worship and that regularity in your schedule and that community. But for me also, the non-negotiable was my individual daily time with the Lord, getting up before my kids, spending time in prayer, spending time in the Word, and just continuing to grow my relationship with the Lord, because I would have nothing to pour out to my kids, and that I needed His strengthening every single day. You know, in those moments when you're overwhelmed and you just are like at the brink and you just, if one more thing happens, you know, you're going to let it all out. In that intentional daily time with Him and in just sitting in His presence, knowing His love for me, knowing His peace, I know that in that moment, I have the ability to go right back there and say to my kids, you know what, I need a minute.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, so many single moms will say, well, I don't have time. You know, I'm strapped, I've got 2 jobs, I've got these kids by myself, I don't have any help, and I don't have time to be in the Word. And I was one of those single moms. I absolutely have said that before, in full disclosure. But what I recognized was I've said that in full-time ministry as a married mom. You know, we have time for what we want to have time for, the truth is, and the other component of it is you don't have time not to be in God's Word.
Yeah.
When you think about strategies to raise your children as godly examples, when you think about how to minister to 3 different children's needs and really raise each one of those children up to be fully what God created them to be, you have to have time with the Lord to get counsel from Him. That's survival mode. Like survival mode's not, okay, I'll get to my Bible once a week or once a month or whenever I can. It's, I'm in survival mode, so I need the Word of God more than, you know, anyone else does. That has to be kind of this mind shift, I think, that takes place. Other things that you can think of that were really important and have been and continue to be.
And I think Michelle said something very critical, is that time before your children get up. And so depending on the season that you are in your life, maybe you don't have an hour for devotions, but carve out 15 minutes, like I was saying, a proverb a day. You know, there's 31 proverbs. So if today's the 5th day of the month, you read Proverbs 5. Maybe you just read one verse, but you must do something. You must have that time alone with the Lord so that you have something that you can gravitate to and hang on to because of this season in your life. You don't, like I said, you might not have an hour, but you've got 5 minutes. You've got 15 minutes while you're in the restroom. Like, find time. Be strategic about finding the time that you need in order to replenish yourself so that you have something to give to your children.
Yeah, I enjoy the Bible app, and I'll play it when I'm getting ready in the morning. So I'm old school. I love the opening it and highlighting and doing the notes and all the things. And I think really there's a lot of value in that and being intentional with that time. But when I am pressed for time, I've got it in my ear playing. I've got it on the way to work, and it's just reinforcing what I already know, but it's like, okay, Lord, what are you speaking to me today in Colossians? What are you speaking to me today in Ephesians that is necessary for me to raise my children well? I think just in a practical sense, there were things that were important to me as I was raising my children about being a godly example through modeling behavior, and some small things, but just things that I think are relevant to the conversation were things like I wasn't going to lie. I was never going to white lie about anything. So tell them I'm not home, which, doesn't happen as much anymore with cell phones, but those types of things that our parents probably did at one point, and we tend to perpetuate I just wasn't going to lie about anything, or, I wasn't going to steal the stapler from work. I wasn't going to do these small compromises that really show my kiddos that it was okay to be deceitful in certain instances or to not be godly in certain instances. So what are other things that you guys, maybe the small things that you found were important?
I found that modeling asking for forgiveness with my children brought such an understanding of humility into my home that when I knew that I had acted out in anger and yelled, that I had the moment to come back and say, you know what, I did the wrong thing. When I'm angry, I actually should remove myself, and I'm sorry for doing that. Would you forgive me? That brought such transparency into my household to show the children that I'm still growing too. And in modeling that, though, that creates a space in our household where we understand what grace is and what it is to apply that when we make mistakes.
Wow. Dana, any final thoughts as we close out today?
just making sure that what's good for your teenager is good for you. You know, you think the first thing that I thought of is fleeing fornication. If fleeing fornication is something we want our children to do, the same is true for us. So making sure that whether it's a teenager, whether it's a young adult, regardless, the Bible is true in every aspect and not to pick and choose from it.
Yeah, you know, the word talks about running from sexual sin because no other sin so clearly affects the body. And yes, we're talking to you single mamas and we're talking about sexual sin because you cannot raise up a child in the way that they should go if you've got the shack up, if you've got the occasional hookup, if you're not operating in sexual integrity and morality. Don't expect that your children are going to be. And I'll also say this, don't expect that you're doing things on the sly and the kiddos don't know. Because even if they're very young, even if they're 2, 3, 4, and maybe don't have the full discernment of what's going on, there's still, even in their little spirits, there's something that's not right and they know it. And so that's a critical one that we did not touch on. Well, ladies, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you so much for stopping by the Life of a Single Mom's YouTube channel.